Two men with thought-provoking intellect, a rousing discussion with a hint of humor. He says this, I say that, with a host that...
Bruh, it's a podcast.
I would like to welcome everybody to Bruh, It's a Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney. We got our two honorary Bermudians, Q&E, with us today. How are y'all doing?
Bermudian?
What?
Yeah.
Where do you come up with this stuff?
How am I? I'll take it. But how am I honorary Bermudian?
I have like one pair of their shorts.
I didn't let you guys know. According to an unofficial chart counter, we are the 18th ranked comedy podcast in Bermuda. So I just thought that I would just give you guys that.
18 though? 18 people funnier than me?
I mean, yeah, apparently, yes. We got to take the good though. It's the positive that we're working toward.
Well,
we're
shout out
on
to
a
Tommy
chart
Bahama.
of something.
This
Shout
is
out to
Tommy
Tommy
Bahama
Bahama.
clothing.
Shout out to Bahama
You never heard
Breeze
of
if that's what we're going to do.
Oh, well, them too. Their appetizers are fantastic.
Just to be clear, Bahamas is not Bermuda. just to be clear.
You're naming two different
Yeah, two different
islands.
countries.
Hey, he brought it up, all right?
Yo, what up? I'm good, man. I'll take all the stamps on my passport I possibly can. What's good with you, Q?
I don't know how to say I'm good in Bermudian.
I think it's
how?
I think it's I'm good.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
They speak
English.
really good English. Yeah.
They don't speak really good English. They speak English.
Yeah. I got two of like some of my favorite people that live down there. I can't say their names. Actually, there's a whole bunch of them down there that I know. So yeah, shout out to y'all. Y'all know who you are. Love y'all.
Oh, they're the ones who listen to the podcast. Good job, people.
Yeah, they're holding us down. I also want to give a big shout out to Terry Tobin, who was here last week. Check out her stuff. Changing pace a little bit. I know that we're usually a comedy podcast and we go over, a lot of different topics, but things have changed. Temperature of, the nation has, taken a turn for the worse. Ahmaud Arbery, while he was jogging, we've had George Floyd, who's passed away because, an officer suppressing his knee against his neck. And we've just also had the protests in front of the White House, where we've had Donald Trump was speaking and people were having a peaceful protest, and there was tear gas and smoke bombs. People that were just outside taking a peaceful stand and trying to, get the word across about what's right in the world and things that should change. I wanted to get your thoughts and really take this episode and some time to really go over what's happening in the world and really what's happening in the U.S. right now.
I mean, there's a lot of things going on, and I know George Floyd is hot right now, and that definitely resonated with me personally, but there's some other people we can't forget, like Briana Taylor, who was in Louisville, and let's not forget about Tatiana Jefferson, who was in Texas, who got assassinated by some officers in her home when they shot her through the window. Unfortunately, this is a recurring thing in our country where people of a darker complexion are losing their lives off of miscommunication, misconceptions, misidentifications. Unfortunately, we're fed up. It's like the perfect storm. You have a lot of people who have lost their jobs due to Corona, a lot of people who haven't went outside. They're being fed all this stuff from the news, and now it's just time to react. There's so many frustrations. There's a civil rights portion to it. There's the economic portion to it. There's a feeling oppressed portion to it. There's a seeking justice portion to it. All of it surrounding in one, and it brought chaos. But with chaos comes change.
2 weeks ago, I never would have thought that COVID-19 would drop a 28-3 lead in the fourth quarter to what's going on now. It seemed like it was going to dominate the headlines pretty much, and now it's in a completely different direction. And honestly, if anybody's been paying attention over the last 4 years, you knew that these type of things were inevitable because we have someone in charge that glorifies these things and gives people that normally cower in corners and hide their racist ideas. He gives them empowerment and a voice, and now they're not scared and just typing on their keyboard how much they hate other people. Makes these type of things inevitable. And for most of us, we've been dealing with these things throughout life. You just pretty much adjust your ways to how you know you're looked at. I'm 6'4". I'm a big guy. So, when I go into some places, people look, I'm used to some people being uncomfortable. But you know what? I might be a funny guy. I might be fun to be around, but I'm not that Will Smith guy that's going to make you comfortable. That's the difference with me. I'm hoping that there's an ending in sight to what we're seeing.
I get the part that you're a funny guy, but you can tell me if I'm wrong. Some people might not even get the chance to see your funny side. Some people might not get the chance chance to see that you're articulate, you're smart, or anything like that, but they automatically just see you as a threat. And because you don't have a chance to express your personality, express your character, or even show that, it's already too late. And that might be what happens to you, but that's definitely what happens a lot to people in our culture.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's not fair that is the case. And the system doesn't necessarily come to our aid in reference to that. Recently, President Trump made a speech, how he dictated himself as the president of law and order. And there's various quotations that occurred in that speech. And I'm sure if we all Google it, we can see it, homework. But one thing that he said is that he is the president of law and order. Well, how could you be the president of law and order, but all these things are occurring, you aren't saying anything? But once the protesting occurs, all of a sudden you want to deploy the National Guard and everything. Now, I'm not the commander in chief, but if you're using all the federal resources on domestic, what's happening abroad, Playboy? What do you think our quote unquote enemies are doing?
They're watching CNN and they're like, now is the time. Okay, maybe they're not saying it like that. You get the point.
Well, at one point, I don't know if it's necessarily shocking to America. And it's funny you mentioned Will Smith. He had a quote. I don't know if he came up with it, but I saw that he posted it where he said, racism isn't getting worse, it's getting filmed. And one of the things that we all joke about social media and how everybody's on their phones, I obviously don't have a stat for this, but I would have to assume that's helped in terms of us having other avenues of evidence, being able to hold police officers accountable. And now it doesn't work every time because we see things like all of these horrendous situations like Ahmaud Arbery, him jogging and his altercation. And even George Floyd, like some of these people that have taken advantage, whether they're being filmed or not, of innocent and defenseless people, they do need to be held to a higher standard as police officers, but this isn't new. And I guess speaking on Will Smith's quote, we now have tools to be able to, have another way, I guess, to defend ourselves, so to speak, when we talk about voting. And this is even something that I feel, I've been not the best with. When we talk about voting, a lot of people always say they'll vote when it matters or presidential election. The effects and the changes are going to start within our community. All of these, mayors or legislators and different people that are in the smaller parts of government, those are the people that we need to put in charge to hold down the communities. And then those growth changes will occur over multiple communities. And then it will lead up to like the governors and our senators and then the president. And we don't necessarily have to depend on our president being the greatest person in the world because of the foundation that's been built with all of these good people that we've put into place. But when we ignore our rights, don't take the time to really vet the people that we're just letting run just because people are running either unopposed or they just have more money, so they're getting their things out there. And if we just did our research, these are people that we wouldn't really vote for. I just think that it's just time for us to really take these things more seriously and find a way to make change happen and realize it really does start with us. I know it's so corny and cheesy, but like we're the people that make up this country and we're the ones that are going to be able to change it.
So I'm going to commend you on your political science lesson. I was a political science major in college, so I felt like I was back in school. So I do appreciate that, Professor Courtney.
I got you.
I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I'm going to say, what does that do for now? Now, you are correct. That is definitely the proper channels to get the job done. Ideally, that change will occur, and based on your plan, 4 years, 8 years, then America will be changed and so forth. How does that bring justice about what is occurring right now?
Well, before you go, I do just want to say, I don't want that to be not necessarily even ours, but most people's mentality, because there's not necessarily a change that's going to happen right now, right? Like it's small steps that make these changes. So if we start thinking that there's instant fixes for things, those shortcuts are going to lead to greater problems. So we just have to think in terms of what we're looking to do.
Yes and no. There are things that need to be addressed on the macro level, which is what you're suggesting, voting and Senate seats and so forth like that. That's on the macro level. But there are things that occur that can be changed on the minor level. I will give Minnesota credit in regard to the Floyd situation because they fired the 4 officers. That's different from what most cases are. Most cases are somebody suspended, they're put on administrative leave, they're giving a desk job. That being said, there's definitely been cases that have been expedited. They could be convicted, they can have their court date set aside because this is definitely not normal circumstance. So that's what I'm talking on the micro level. Obviously, the macro level is changing everything and changing policies and so forth, but this can be addressed. I hope we realize that for the most part, if these 4 officers were convicted, I'm pretty sure the rioting would stop. Not saying that maybe some people would still do it, but the drastic measures that are being taken as of right now is because the wound is fresh and it hasn't been healed or addressed. At least that's my thought process. So if they were to handle that quickly, maybe things would change instead of tear gassing, deploying the military on the protesters. Or not all protests, are violent. You are correct. That is happening. You are correct. And that's probably what's arising more awareness. But what happens when peaceful protests are not taken seriously or villainized? We see Kaepernick talked about this 4 years ago, and it was peaceful. He lost his job, can't get a job, and he was villainized for kneeling. Now this is happening. Colin Kaepernick don't look that bad no more. History repeats itself. Nobody listened to Martin Luther King at first. Maybe not nobody, but I'm just speaking in jest. Martin Luther King wasn't really loved at first with his ideology until Malcolm X came along. Then it was like, well, Martin Luther King ain't that bad. Why can't you be more like that guy?
You bring up a point, E, that I actually want you to touch upon. You talk with us, we're a younger generation, and you grew up, right? When you were young, when you were between the ages, we'll say 18, 25, 30, if you had to take a snapshot of things that you were dealing with then and things that people that same age are dealing with now, like to you, how has the world changed and how has it stayed the same?
It's changed in a sense that it has become more violent. In the summer of 95, I can remember being pulled over and having a gun put to my head. The cop telling me he was going to kill me.
Wow.
Somehow I survived that encounter. But if that encounter occurred today, I think it would have ended much differently. The summer of 94, that summer I was pulled over 65 times in the summer. Like, think about that.
65 times.
65 times in one summer.
You must have been doing something wrong, Q.
Yeah, living in Maplewood. That's what I was doing wrong. And that's what happened.
Did you have dreads?
No, man.
Okay.
I had a white Chevy Cavalier with a luggage rack on the back.
Did you have a bandana on or something?
Occasionally.
Okay. We got to let the people know that you were a gangster.
When I was younger, I resembled Tupac. It worked well for the ladies.
And the cops.
In terms of, those things never change. They just evolve and they become worse. And that's why I went through all the things I went through when I was young, constantly being pulled over, constantly being harassed by the police. We've all gone through that. But it wasn't to the degree that it is now. Or, again, maybe it was. I didn't have a cell phone when I was in my 20s.
I hear what you're saying. I don't think that it's happening more now or even more aggressive now. I just think now that it's being documented, now it's being recorded, so now it's more awareness, right? Because we see these things now we're believing stories that we might have heard in the past, but we thought it was a lie. Like if I told you that I saw police officers kneel on somebody's neck and he died while he was detained by them, you would be like, really? If I told you that I saw with my own 2 eyes that he was dead, but they still kneeled on him for 2 minutes afterwards, you would have thought I was exaggerating. But now the fact that it's recorded and is documented, it's bringing way more awareness. It's almost to the fact that we're desensitized to it now. And now it's just like, it's bringing awareness to like, oh my goodness, all of these stories were actually true. And if anything, when people are on camera, they hold back. Imagine if there aren't cameras around. How would they be acting? It's insane.
I got a question for you guys. Does every Caribbean guy that goes to college major in poli-sci? Or does it just seem like it?
No, that's not true. A lot of us are doctors and lawyers.
Ooh, that was a great answer.
And engineers. Those are the only respected professions in the Caribbean.
That's 100% true.
Everything else is like, you might as well open a bakery.
So then I'll ask you a question. What is change, right? Like you've lived through your era growing up and you're seeing what's happening now, Q, what is change? E started to talk about what can happen 4 or 5 years from now, what can happen instantly, expediting, but what starts that change? What makes that change? And what does change really even mean?
Well, young people didn't have power like they do now years ago. Our young people weren't young millennials that were out in the streets trying to make a difference or marching. Marching was the older folks. Making change was the older folks. Everything was the people that were older doing all the things. The younger folks didn't really get involved in things like they do now. I think that's the biggest thing, that younger people have so much of a voice now as opposed to when I was in my 20s. Because when I was in my 20s, we just pretty much listened to what the older folks said. So it wasn't a lot of young people carving out a path, doing things like you see now. That's what I would say is the major difference from then to now.
Well, what's a young people age, though? Because Martin Luther King died at 39. So what's a young people age?
Between 17 and 25, I think.
17, 25, I think those are the people who are more equipped with social media, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, there's 13-year-olds and 10-year-olds who are TikToking, so they're familiar with social media. But when you're 17 to 25, you were like in the age range where it began, it started booming, so you kind of like grew with it. So I think social media definitely gives you a voice, which arguably makes it more powerful because the idea of followings, right? And how many followers you have and so forth, yada, yada. So that makes you more impactful. But I think young people were always at the forefront because of the sheer fact that they have the physical abilities. They might not have the experience as an older person, but they're able to take part in a march. They're able to take part in a sit-in. Like in the sit-in in the 60s, they're getting punched. I don't see a 70-year-old man willing to get punched at a diner. You know what I mean? Maybe a 20-year-old man is willing to get punched. And like I said, Martin Luther King died at 39. That's still relatively young. He had quite a time to make an impact and so forth. The way I look at it, and it's me, is the 60s and the late 50s were the heights of the civil rights movement, right? And those people set the blueprint and the way for us today to be able to have a voice and so forth. My mentality is, would those people be proud of this generation?
It's funny you say that. We talk about social media and like how powerful it's become, and you don't even need a following, right? Like you just need a viral moment or capturing something that people see. Like I could only imagine how powerful it would be if like Martin Luther King gave his speech and it's trending on Twitter. It's all over everybody's Instagram. The highlights are everywhere. And it's like a message that impacts everyone at the same time. That would have been a moment that everyone would have been able to be a part of, live streaming. Imagine that moment in social media. So I think, what do I know? But I feel like it would be so impressive. We were able to ask Martin Luther King and he was just, able to see like everybody can get it instantly and you can check here and you can check here. And it doesn't have to be you finding a radio to listen to when he was speaking or finding somebody that had that, entertainment system for everybody to gather around and know what time it was. It would be spread the message. That's why I started this. I put this message out there to take it and digest it, but now it's your turn to do something with it. And the people that use social media for good, because it's definitely a tool that can be used for good and spread certain messages. I think that it's really, really important to utilize at this time because it doesn't lie. Once you're there and I'm holding my camera and I'm looking at you and you do something, I have it here and I'm going to let as many people know to try to hold you accountable for your actions.
I like the fact that you're viewing it that way. I view it from this perspective. In the 60s and so forth, these people had to sit-ins or sit on a bus and walk through the tape, be willing to get hosed down, get dogs sicked on you, and so forth. Us who are reaping the benefits from all that hard work that was put in those times, we're scared to send out a tweet. To step up and say...
But you know what? That inspires change faster. One of the things that will happen now is we read about these things. It's almost like when they tell people that are raised in poverty, you only have certain out, like Biggie, you got to be able to rap, hoop, or sling crack, right? like you only have limited options. But now in this world, we have so many different options of jobs that we can grow up to be. We just didn't know. We didn't know that a producer can make so much money. We didn't know that you can be in media and have all these jobs. That doesn't mean you're necessarily an actor. You could produce, you could do color grading. Like there's so many different things. So in the same vein, in social media, if I look on my phone and I see a regular Tom or Jamal or whoever, he's doing something. I didn't know that people were doing that. And he's my age. So if he can do that, I can do that. And then I post that and then my friends see that. And it's not just a story that I read in a history book anymore. This is something that I'm seeing on my feed or something that I'm seeing on my phone that somebody who looks just like me is doing, people that are around my age are doing. And that's what inspires change to happen at the same time. And it's not now these stories that parents are telling us that we're just going to ignore. It's not stories that our grandparents are telling us. We're like, that was so long ago. No, that was Tuesday at 3:46 p.m. And you get to see that and say, oh, you know what? If he can do something, I can do something too. And then it just builds into a snowball effect and it just grows from there.
I'm definitely agreeing with you in the fact that it's impactful. What I'm saying is that everybody has a voice and we got to do more to stand up for injustice. That's all I'm saying. It was more calculated back then in reference to having to plan it out and get it done and more physically bearing on one's body than it is today to just send out a tweet, send out something on social media, something like that. I just think that we have a duty to stand up for human rights, and we all should be doing it.
In Minnesota, Muhammad Noor, who was a police officer, accidentally shot a white woman, killed her, and he got 12 years. He is locked up as we speak. Now you
Do you remember how
forward,
quick that turnaround was, sir?
It was extremely quick. And now we have a guy that did this, and he's up on third-degree murder charges.
Third degree.
I mean, he'll probably, if he does time, which I'm under the impression he's not going to, he will probably do 2 years, if that, and then he will disappear. The scales are very unbalanced, and that's where the issue comes in, and it seems like something that will never change. If I could control everything for a few minutes, I know I would have the Minnesota Vikings draft Colin Kaepernick. Start with that. For all the people that kicked him for silently protesting, a lot of them won't admit it, but I'm sure it makes sense to a lot of the people that were condemning him for his actions previously. We're not a society to ever admit that we're wrong about something or someone.
See, I don't want Minnesota to sign Kaepernick because now it's a PR stunt. I don't want them to sign him. That's just to calm them down and you know, hey guys, we support you guys. No. That's a PR stunt. If I'm Kaepernick now, I'm a martyr because everybody knows what I set up for, and now I'm looking good, whereas I was villainized before. And that's my problem with the powers that be, because instead of arresting and convicting 4 clearly guilty officers, they rather vilify, assault, and terrorize thousands of protesters who are seeking justice. I'm not rolling with that. Just to be clear, the officer that was kneeling on Mr. Floyd was, I believe his name is Derek Chauvin. There's another officer, Thomas Lane, Tu Thao, I believe that's the guy who was like blocking them, and J. Alexander Kung. So I want all these names to be known as to who these people are. Now, according to Yahoo, Derek and Mr. Floyd used to work together back in the day. They used to work together. They used to work together at a nightclub as security. I don't think that's third degree because there is a prior relationship. So maybe you guys got into a fight while working together. I don't know what it is, but there is some type of relationship. When I see you kneeling on him like that, and if you watch the video closely, you can see he's applying pressure. So there is something personal about this. So there's no way it could honestly be third degree.
It's going to be a loaded question to end with. It's just food for thought for everybody listening. Why do you feel or think that America is scared of Black people? And I don't want it to just be like, I think like all Americans are scared of Black people, but just in context of what we're talking about right now. Like, why do you feel like that is so prevalent, that these people are so fearful of Black people in these situations, that these are the measurements that they have to take? Is it just hate? Is it fear? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
The oppressor never wants to give up power. They destroyed Black Wall Street. People are uniting like this, and this is an American phenomenon, right? This is happening in states, different cities, And this is arguably the most impactful riot protesting that I can remember, honestly. This is the most I've seen that's so active, and it's consistent. Like, it's consistent. And that is going to bring about change. And the only way that they know, which is the powers that be, to react is by force. But the problem is, when you feel like you have nothing to lose, you're the most person to be feared, because you can't go worse than at the bottom. So if you're ready for at the bottom, I don't think the idea that deploying military is the way to go. If anything, that's going to show that, okay, this is how it's going to be. Well, then this is how it's going to be.
Partially because for a long time we weren't considered humans at all. We were considered animals. We were considered cattle. We were considered less than a person. So when you're looked at in that way for so long, there's a stigma that attaches itself to it. People become comfortable looking at you as less than a person or cattle. And the thought, if you woke up tomorrow with the thought that cows and chickens could take over the world or be equal to you, the thought of that would be scary to you. So to a lot of people, it's a scary thought because their grandfather, their great grandmother have been telling them for years that Black people are less than a regular person. There's white people that have paintings on their wall of our great grandmother serving their great grandmother soup, and that's what they get accustomed to. From that standpoint, the fact that we are intelligent and normal and possibly equal to them is frightening. It threatens what they have grown up believing and accustomed to. And that's why you see things like people calling police on us for no reason, or because the thought that someone that you have been brought up to believe is less than you isn't, is a frightening thing. And that's why so many things happen, and that's why the world is in the state that it's in. We just watched a man executed on live television, lynched, like we're in the 1800s, and Drew Brees still got up and said he doesn't believe in people disrespecting the flag. Even with all we're going through, you're still making it about a piece of cloth. And he went on to say how, oh, the flag, when I see it, I think of my great-grandfather who fought in the war. But what he doesn't realize is we have a different picture when we see the flag. We think of how we've been oppressed. We think of how we've been held down. We think of how we've gone through this. We think of how we've gone through that. We think of how our great-grandparents were raped and murdered. We think of how land was taken from us. So it's a whole different thing. But people like Drew Brees don't have to deal with that. He doesn't have to worry about when his kid gets pulled over. And because he has a blind eye to it, he's never experienced it. So that's why he's an ignorant idiot. For the way that the world is and what we're dealing with, unfortunately, there is no end in sight. But we're going to stay positive. We're going to stay the course. And eventually, hopefully, we'll get back to a normal place.
Yeah. I mean, my final thoughts are some of the best experiences that I've had. I lived in Canada for a good bit. It was always awesome to kind of experience different cultures because what that did was I learned and I gathered new information. And the reason why I bring that up is I think ignorance at its most honest form is a lack of information. And when we all learn about one another and we know the struggles that we've had or the foods that we like or the words that we like to use or whatever the cases are, we grow together, right? So people from different areas, if I know you and I trust you, that's how people tend to get closer together. And when I understand your culture and you understand mine, that's what to me will bring about change. And that's not something that changes overnight, probably years or whatever the case is. But like information is really key when we're looking to get mad at somebody and we just have to learn why are we mad or like where do they come from and just trying to understand. And I guess empathy is a big part of that. Knowledge is so powerful that we look at all these other things when we should be looking at learning of other people, learning from other people and putting ourselves in their shoes, and then we'll see what comes from that. I want to thank everybody for joining us for this episode. It was a little different, but we thought it was very, very important to talk about these things and spark a question. Talk with your friends and family, everybody, Black, white, Latino, Chinese, everyone. Talk to people. ask their thoughts, speak about what's going on in the world right now. I want to thank Q&E for today. I want to tell everybody, please check us out next week. We'll be back next Thursday. We're on Instagram at Bruh It's a Podcast.
Black Planet.
You can always leave us a question at anchor.fm/BIAP. Also, if you have any questions about what we spoke about today, knowledge and information can be shared in all places. Please send us an email at bruhitsapodcast@gmail.com. We really look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, we
And
love them.
hopefully-
They know we love them. It was great to have this conversation. Dag, Courtney, you talk so daggone much. Play the music.
Bruh, 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 bruh. It's a podcast.